Hello, and thank you all for joining us today. My name is Paul Kalman. I'm from Pecan AI. We have a great webinar for everyone today. It's around how to do more with your data in 2023. To help present content on this webinar, we are joined with John Chow. He's the head of strategic accounts at Pecan, as well as Noam Brazy, CTO and co-founder of Pecan AI. So to kick things off, I'm going to pass the first question over to you, Noam. Noam, there's a stat kind of shared around the internet that roughly 87% of data science projects don't make it into production these days. Are you able to briefly explain, why it is so difficult to get data projects into production?
Hey, yeah, definitely. So it's a great point, and I think that people are actually not talking about this enough. And having data science is really hard. And let's dig into, why is it so hard to have data science projects? So first of all, of course, you need to have, extremely professional data scientists. That's like number one. If you want to go to the task, you need to have very good people out there, and that's not easy task to find them. So that's number one, but it's not enough. Even if, you hire the right people, it's not easy. And the main reason is that actually it's not just having about the data scientist. You actually, next step is to gather the data. But even before gathering the data, you need to understand, and that's the big mistake. A lot of companies run, to gathering the data, but you first need to understand to have that connection between the business and the data scientist. And that's the most important part. It's not that you can just take, a group of data scientists, tell them, just take the data, have insights, or do predictive analytics and machine learning. That's not going to work. It's really about having a very strong connection between business and data science. And the thing is that it's really hard. These are very different languages. It's really, really hard to have that connection between business, which has a very, unique way of thinking, and data scientists, which is also very unique and very, very different, much more about statistics and math versus business, where it's really about having the KPIs and where you want to get and having these business initiatives. So it's really, you need to build that connection with this, which is something really hard. Now, that's again, even not enough. You need to have connection to the data. And once you have your model trained, which is, of course, have a lot of iterations about understanding how you're creating your data in a well, format. And it's more than that. Once you have your model ready, you need to have it deployed in production. So now you need to have engineering in place or connected to these teams, which is again something really hard. So think how many different teams in the organization you need in order to have such a project. And that's what makes it so hard for these projects to succeed. It just, the main point is that it takes so much time that actually once you have a model in production, in many cases, it's not relevant anymore. It's just takes too much time. So it's super critical to have it, in a way where things are much more efficient than they are currently.
Awesome. That's great response. So the question that kind of looms on that from there is, there are a lot of tools out there that can help bring the data scientists with the business into kind of the same conversation. Pecan is a tool like that, and I'm sure that from the audience today on this webinar, they get pitched by tools all the time that can do this. Can you briefly describe one, how does Pecan solve that problem of bringing the data scientists or the data cleansing with the actual business? And then two, what really makes Pecan different?
Sure, it's a great point, and I think there's so much noise in our in our area where everybody wants machine learning these days. Everyone predictive analytics, and it's a very powerful tool. But the problem is really how, and like we were talking earlier, there are challenges in order to get there. Now, if you look out there, that there are many tools. Actually, you're going to see that we can have these tools in different buckets. One is it's really tools which are especially for data scientists to have their day-to-day more efficient. That's you're going to see SageMaker, for example, that Amazon have. and many other tools. Data Robot are exactly, in that section where it's used for data scientists. It was built for data scientists, and it's really to make them more efficient. But the point is, and that's really important, it's not going to help them talk to the business. I would even claim that the contrary is what's happening, is that actually it's going to cause data scientists to be much more focused about the work they have in data science, but not talking the same language with the business. And Pecan is very, very different in that aspect. What we actually understood very early in building the company is that actually it's about the use case. You need to start from the use case. And the second point is that actually there's a persona, the data analyst, which knows data already, is very much connected to the business. And Pecan is about actually giving a tool for the data analyst, not the data scientist. Of course, data scientists, and we'll talk about it in a second, are also very happy to use Pecan to build models because it's a very efficient way. But the point is, the main point is really to allow people that don't have data science knowledge, like data analysts that are familiar with the data and that actually have a connection to the business. We now give them a tool where they can build these models. And we're going to see, of course, we're going to see this, in a second in the webinar. We're going to go inside the platform, better understand, but it's really, the idea is that it starts from the use case, from the business question, and that was extremely important in our perspective.
Right, that's awesome. So John, I'm going to kind of flip gears a little bit and let's talk about it from the business side, right? So knowing the trends out there, that there's all these models that are just not making it to production due to the number of factors that Noam discussed. And then there's this aspect of these tools that allow essentially the business to create models. In your opinion, like across those two questions, like what is the impact on the business?
Yeah, I think the first way to answer that question is to go back to how is it impacting the business when things aren't making it into production. So first, if you think about what Noam said about how long it takes and how much effort is required to get these models into production, that is a lot of time and effort and money the companies are spending. And if they don't make it into the business, you're seeing very little or no ROI, right? Two, early on in the journey that many of these companies take to adopt these types of technologies, we rely on momentum. So if these initial projects aren't succeeding, you may actually have a negative effect on your ability to innovate going forward. And finally, not actually being able to put those things into your business produces a real business risk, both in terms of having to rely on older processes or having to compete against customers or rivals who actually are able to leverage these technologies.
Yeah. And what, from your perspective, what are we seeing right now in terms of how customers are reacting? How are they interacting with our platform or with the platform? And really, what are they doing in terms of measuring success? Like, how did they look at it?
Yeah, so the ability to use any type of platform and actually bring the capability into the business is a game changer. First of all, like Noam said, you have analysts and business executives who actually understand and control the use case, and they can actually shape it as they go about it. So if something changes or the business problem shifts, that is now something they have the power to pivot with as it changes in real time, right? And what we're seeing with our actual customers is that you're seeing successful early use cases, which breeds confidence and increases that momentum. And we're seeing additional use cases being adopted and additional teams from outside these original teams we're working with adopt this new capability. So it spreads and breeds additional successes around the organization.
That's awesome. And Noam, are we able to start seeing this in action? Like, are you able to kind of jumpstart a demo environment and allow us to kind of walk through this from a hands-on perspective?
Yes, definitely. Would love to do it. So I'll just share my screen. And welcome to Pecan. Can you see my screen well?
Yep.
Perfect. So you can see here that actually we'll see there are three main parts in Pecan, and it's very, very simple. The first one is about connecting the data. Once we'll have the data connected, we will have the blueprints, which is the part where we're going to build our model. And finally, when the model is ready, we will see it under models, and we will see how easy it is to actually understand the performance of the model and how easy to deploy and to start use it on a day-to-day basis. So let's look how we connect our data. First part is just add connection. We're just going to press on the add connection button. And you can see here that we have various data sources which you can connect to Pecan. So something very important to say is that you can connect actually more than one data source. You can have various data sources and actually connect data from different technologies. And so, for example, you can see here that we have BigQuery, SQL Server, Oracle, Parquet files, Snowflake. So all the various databases, data lakehouse, CSV files. So all of these are data sources that you can connect to Pecan and actually load the data inside Pecan. So that's the first step. Once we have the data connected, you can see here that we have actually for each table, what are the various columns. And when you import the data, you can do this in a way where it's incremental import. So we're not going to load every time all the data, only new data is going to be imported into Pecan or in a snapshot import where actually we're going to bring all the data every time. So once we have the data connected, then we can go to the blueprint. We can actually start building our model. And you can see that once I press the new blueprint, we have our use cases, which are out of the box. In a second, we're going to see that actually with Pecan, you can do much more than these use cases. But these are the use cases which are out of the box, very, very easy to start with. And from there, we can move to different variations and actually even very different use cases. So we have, you can see here, everything that's related to the customer journey. If it's retention, LTV, lifetime value, conversion, churn, upsell, high value customers. Let's just look at the upsell, how that goes, and then we'll take it from there. So once I press on the upsell use case, you can see that automatically the platform actually builds what we call the predictive question. This is going to actually tell us really what are we predicting. So you can see here predict on a weekly basis, and you see the weekly is a variable. We'll talk about this in a second. So predict on a weekly basis, what is the likelihood of a customer who made a purchase in the last 30 days to make an additional one within the next 60 days. So again, the 30 and the 60 days are variables, which we can very easily actually change. And once we're going to change them, we're changing our model. We're changing our predictive question. You can see how easy it is to do these manipulations. We can, of course, change the frequency from weekly to monthly or daily. It really depends on, and again, this is super important, what the business wants. It's not about the data science. It's really about what the most connected to the business. You want to say something?
John, I want to interrupt you right there, Noam, because looking at how flexible this platform allows the business to be in terms of model creation, how does this impact the delivery and the results that the customers are able to drive on a weekly or monthly basis? Like, how are they interacting with this type of a feature?
So, I mean, what we're seeing, and this goes back to what we talked about before, was how we shrink the timeline from, months and months of data science work to something much, much shorter in the span of, hours or days. The ability to change your question and have the business user maybe change their mind midway through the project on what they want to predict allows the project to continue going rather than to start over. And this is a huge benefit of a platform like this.
It's amazing. So Noam, if we can continue, this is great.
Sure. So this is really about the use case out of the box that we were talking about, the upsell. Let's look how we can actually do customization and take it to a very different question if you want, or use case. So we have the show PQL. Once we're going to press it, you can see that we have now SQL queries. So anybody who knows SQL can really have access and change the queries to actually make and change the business question that we are asking. So or that we are solving in these cases. So for example, you can see here we have this query, which, and in a second we'll talk about that we have these variables. So the concept is really where the data analyst is going to have a layer and use these variables to make it really accessible for the business to do very, very simple changes and create variations of the model, which is really the power of the platform. So we have, you can see the compiled version where you really see what is the queries that have been built. We can take this query, go to the playground, and just have a quick preview of exactly what we're having out of the results of this query. So this is really a tool that gives us the power using SQL to really be able to change and build predictive analytics questions. Now, just as an example, I'm not going to go into the queries, of course, in this demo, but if, for example, we would like, just to add a very simple where clause, where, for example, we want the country to be able for the business to decide what's the country we want the model to be built for. So we can just have here our customer country, and automatically we have a new variable created on the right side. And now I can go decide what type of variable this is. And now actually the business has the ability to change. So the business owner can now change the various countries, decide on what country they want to build the model, and just press train the model. So you can see how easy it is to take really the various components that we have for building the model and customize them just by using SQL. So you can see this is the first query. This is the population for which we're going to do the prediction. The second query is the target query. What are we predicting? So in this case, it's upsell, but maybe we want to do it something very different. We're just going to change that query to a different target. And once we have the new target, this is what the model is going to be built for. And the last part is the attributes. So you can see that we can have a new attribute table. Now, attributes is actually the data that Pecan is going to use in order to train the model and run the prediction. Now, this is very important, and actually we didn't talk about it enough. Going back to your first question, Paul, you asked, why is it so hard? There's so much, we were talking about connection to the business, right? And there's so many data manipulations you need to do. For example, understand what to do when you have missing data, what to do with anomalies. There's really a lot of things. What is beautiful in Pecan is that actually we do all these pre-processing of the data automatically. All you need to do is connect, for example, your transaction table, just give it a name. So for example, transaction table, what are the columns you want to plug in? So you can just have all of them, or for example, if you have any column you don't want to have, if it's, for example, for security reasons, you don't want to have that data in, if it's like a PII, so you can just remove it from here. What is the column for joining the data? And if there's a one-to-many relationship, what is the date column? And actually, once you plug in that data, everything is ready. You're just going to add the query. And that's how you can enrich your model with more and more data and create a very powerful model. And so last step is really just to press train the model. So once we...
So I'm not sure if I stole your thought on this, but what happens next? Like, how do you validate the results and kind of put this data into action?
Beautiful. Exactly. So once we have the model ready, we can go to the models. And you can see here, really, we're going to see. So let's just take an example of our upsell demo. And you can see here exactly what are the performance of the model. So this is going to be a precision and detection. And you can see that actually you can do a manipulation and understand, really, given the size of the population that you want to target, what is the real precision and detection rate that you have. And you can see that with a higher threshold, meaning you're using more and more actually of this AI and ML, you're getting higher precision rate. This is really how much you see that the model has the power to identify that population that we're looking for. This is exactly what we see here. And so the idea is that once we're happy with exactly the model that we have in the population, all we need to do in order to have a model in production is just press use the model. Once you press that button, you're going to schedule the run, have a query of the population for which you want to have the prediction, And finally, send back the results to your data lakehouse database, exactly as we saw earlier for taking in the data. It's the same connectors we're going to use to send back the results to your data warehouse or data lakehouse. So this is exactly in a place where we're seeing how powerful the model is. But that's not enough. There's even more, and it's really important. You remember, Paul, how we were talking that actually once you have a model in production, it's not enough. You want to see really what's happening with that model. Like if it's taking too much time, this is really not going to be helpful, and we want to have the model quickly in production, but that's not enough. We need to have monitoring, live monitoring of the model. And this is exactly what you see here in prediction over time. So it's really important to understand that this model is just, it's not that you deploy and that's it, you forget about it. Things change in life. And this is super hard when you have, a team of data scientists to rebuild the model every time something changes. You don't even know. You need monitoring. And this is what we have here. It's automatic monitoring of the model. Where, so for example, imagine we're predicting 30 days ahead. After these 30 days, you actually know really what ultimately happened, right? And this is where our platform is going to see really what happened and tell you how well the model is running in production. And if there's a degradation of the performance, of course, we're going to get an alert, and we can just duplicate the model, have a new one, and use this new fresh model, which is going to be, with a high performance back in place. Now, more than that, we have the feature importance. So remember, we were plugging in all the data. Now, Pecan has a feature selection, which is super important. We do feature engineering and feature selection, meaning that actually we're going to tell you what are the most important factors that drive the model. Just as an example here, the amount of history records, and you can really see how it has an impact over the model. For example, here, amount of distinct campaigns, order type, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not only about creating these features, the platform is going to tell us what are the most important features. And you can see this at the level of the model to better understand really how that model is what are the underlying assumptions of the model, but you also have that at the prediction level. So for example, if you're doing prediction for a customer, for each customer, what are the most contributing factor for that specific customer? Now that's crucial. For example, if you're going to do a specific action, you might do different actions according to the most contributing factors.
This is amazing. So John, one last question that I have for you, and thank you, Noam. This is an amazing overview. What are our customers doing? As they go through and create these models and they get them into production, what do they do? What's the output? What do they do with the data at that point?
So, it really depends on the individual customer. What we're seeing most is that because we're working with the business and we're providing this level of transparency, the change management that they're actually having to do when they use our predictions is very low. They understand their business, they understand their processes, and they typically already have systems or dashboards up in use. They can simply plug these predictions into, replacing maybe an older, less sophisticated way of forecasting or predicting. And the business actually doesn't miss a step when they're able to, leverage this more intelligent prediction. So much easier than a typical large project change management because we're working directly with the business users.
Awesome. Gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. The key kind of takeaways that I've gathered is Pecan, it connects, it's flexible, highly validated data, designed for forecasting and action. Again, I thank you for your time today and walking us through the higher level trends in data science, what's making data science so hard, and how the business can benefit from tools like Pecan. For all those in attendance today, if you have more questions or you'd like to learn more about Pecan, feel free to visit us at www.pecan.ai and leave a message, and we'll get back with you as soon as possible. Again, thank you for your time today, and have a good rest of the afternoon.